All right, New York's Governor Kathy Hochul is pissed off, and not because young children keep asking, what happened to your face? At a recent media appearance, she begged ex-wealthy New Yorkers who fled the state to come back to support her social programs.
Do you want to know what I really think? It's how dare they take an elected official who's been going down there for weeks to escort people who are afraid to walk into a courthouse in the United States.
At what point does a state stop collecting taxes and start practically begging rich people to stay? Because New York might already be there. Greg Gutfeld jumped on this story like it was comedy gold, while Kathy Hochul sounds more like someone trying to win back an ex who already drove off in the Lamborghini. But is this really just about money? Or is something even more uncomfortable happening behind the scenes?
She doesn't know why. She acts like Zeldin had just made a disparaging remark about the color of her shoes or why she likes orange juice with pulp. Which is disgusting. Sorry. But it says it all about the modern Democrat. They prefer fake victims over real ones.
I said I don't want to raise income taxes on high net worth people. I want them to know that New York is a place where we want to foster innovation, be open to your success, because your success means you're hiring more people. You're putting more people to work. Any tax increase has to come across my desk first.
Is not every day that one of America's most powerful states starts sounding like it is trying to win back people who already seem ready to leave. But that is exactly the strange and slightly ironic situation playing out in New York right now.
For a while since we've been on the 5, like remember that U-Haul costs from San Francisco to Texas, the one way was like so high.
And there's more research showing that it's getting worse. I love that she's begging right now, that Hochul's begging. She reminds me of a really stupid guy who dumps his girlfriend because he thought since he has this girlfriend, he can have any girl, right? He's like, you know, I'm in a relationship and the grass is always greener. And now she's gone and he's just...
Before we go any further, hit that like button and subscribe, because this is one story you do not want to miss. For decades, New York built its image as the place for ambition, money, and power, where success was not just earned, but proudly shown off across the city's skyline. The message was simple and hard to argue with. If you could make it in New York, you could make it anywhere.
This week, we saw an amazing contrast to two governors and their inauguration speeches. While one spoke of celebrating policies that led to unprecedented population growth, the other groveled to citizens she once mocked for leaving her state. First, the Empress of Eyebrows. New York Governor Kathy Hochul vowing to make her state a better place to live. Well, as soon as she figures out who replaced her Botox with crazy glue.
That is why the situation feels so strange right now. The same state that once defined economic power is now being talked about like it is struggling to win back the ground it already lost.
What I want to make sure we are smart about is having a system in place where it's not just taxing for the sake of taxing, and being conscious of the fact that I need people who are high net worth to support the generous social programs that we want to have in our state.
I've seen less desperate women on The Bachelorette. The translation, rich dudes, I want you back because I miss your money.
Greg Gutfeld takes this story and turns a serious policy debate into something that feels surprisingly personal. Instead of focusing only on numbers and statistics, he highlights how unusual it sounds when a state known for power and confidence suddenly seems to be convincing wealthy residents to come back. Much of the attention has landed on Kathy Hochul, not just because of her policies, but because of the tone of her messaging. The criticism goes beyond politics and focuses on the image being created. With humor and sharp commentary, Gutfeld frames the whole situation like a relationship where one side only realizes the consequences after the other side has already moved on.
She's him. She's now looking up all the exes, for emotional support. Please come back. I was wrong. But the fact is, there's no cost-benefit advantage to being in a city. The blue cities have now become cities that blow a lot, and a lot has to do with, the crime and stuff. And I feel like DeSantis' speechwriters are watching my show because he's comprehending the zeitgeist, which is the spirit or mood of a country, Jesse.
Thank you.
At a particular time.
The comparison connects with people because it turns a complicated economic issue into something easy to understand. Rising costs, changing policies, and shifting priorities can slowly make an environment feel less sustainable for some residents and businesses. According to the panel, New York's tax structure has become a major part of that conversation, pushing more people to look at states like Florida, where costs are lower and opportunities appear more attractive. The debate is no longer just about taxes, but about which state offers a better overall value and quality of life. The bigger concern is the shrinking tax base, since wealthy residents contribute a large share of state revenue, and their departure can affect public funding in many areas.
Remember, as crime raged across her state, she made it a law to refer to people in real estate with gender-neutral pronouns, such as real estate salespeople or salespersons. I can see the criminal on the stand during his trial. Then I stabbed her 22 times before throwing her off a bridge. And the judge goes, "Sir, I'm not going to tell you again. You must respectfully refer to the person you butchered as the they, or I'll insist on bail in your case." I'm sure the realtors will be pleased when New Yorkers use the right pronoun as they scream, "For the love of God, sell our home so we can move to Florida."
This creates a chain reaction where keeping the same level of public services becomes harder as more revenue disappears. The situation is complicated because it is not caused by one single issue, but by a mix of economic and cultural factors that influence how people make decisions. According to the panel, many residents are not leaving only because of taxes, but because of how they view the overall environment, including policies, public debate, and the general atmosphere. As those concerns grow, states with lower taxes, fewer regulations, and a different culture start looking more attractive instead of just being backup options. Greg Gutfeld leans into this contrast, using humor to point out the gap between how New York sees itself and how the situation looks from the outside.
Up.
Now, there are some patriotic millionaires who stepped up. Okay, cut me the checks. I mean, just if you want to be supportive, but maybe the first step should be go down to Palm Beach and see who you can bring back home, because our tax base has been eroded. I have to look at the fact that we are in competition with other states who have less of a tax burden on their corporations and their individuals, and I would say remote work changed everything.
This approach highlights how much perception shapes public opinion, since how something is said can matter as much as what is being said. The criticism of Kathy Hochul focuses on this idea, suggesting that her tone may come across as uncertain at a time when leadership is expected to feel steady and confident. While the goal of encouraging people to return may be practical, it becomes controversial when it seems to admit the problem without fully addressing its root causes. That includes questions about high living costs, business regulations, and how the state is viewed by those who are able to leave. Without real changes in these areas, efforts to bring people back may not work, since the original reasons for leaving are still there. In the end, this moment is seen by many as more than a short-term issue, but a turning point for the state's future direction.
And the zeitgeist is that you can feel it, that we're all done with the woke.
Yeah.
It's over. And before it basically blew through America, and it scared the crap out of people. And so we all just sat there and we said, "Oh my God, cancel culture, it's here to stay." But then people started to realize, no, if you actually just share the risk. Remember we said that? If you share the risk and you face the bully, it just collapses. And now I think he's at the tip of the spear right now with.
The stakes are high because the outcome will shape New York's economic and cultural direction for years to come. What makes this story compelling is how it blends economics, politics, and human behavior into one narrative that feels both specific and universal. On one level, it is about taxes and migration patterns, but on another, it is about how people react when a place no longer matches their expectations or priorities. It reflects the tension between preserving a strong identity and adapting to change in a way that ensures long-term stability. This is not simple, as it requires balancing competing pressures and dealing with challenges that have built up over time. In the end, the situation is a reminder that even the most established places are not immune to change, and that long-term success depends on constant adaptation.
Announces that all SUNY college campuses would enforce chosen names and pronouns to ensure that transgender, non-binary, and non-conforming identities experience a diverse, inclusive environment for the LGBTQIA, LMNOP, QRST. Sorry. I'm getting tired of a community that demands more letters than an episode of Sesame Street. You know what? Why not just pass a law saying all heterosexuals must transition by 2025.
The discussion sparked by Greg Gutfeld in the panel emphasizes the need to look at not only what is happening, but why it is happening and what it could mean going forward. The outcome will depend on how effectively leadership responds and whether New York can rebuild an environment that matches the expectations of the people it wants to attract. For now, the question of whether it can reclaim its status as the top destination for success remains open to debate. The panel points to rising costs and policy choices viewed as unfavorable to high earners and businesses, which together weaken the state's overall value proposition. This is not presented as a sudden collapse, but as a gradual shift that has become more visible as more people respond to it.
The horror of getting misgendered on the coroner's report after you've been. So she asks her challenger, I don't see why putting criminals behind bars is so important to you. Well, because, Kathy, it's not important to you. That's the problem. The governor abandoned citizens' concerns for the attention-seeking, woke garbage that her staff handpicks off Twitter. And while it makes you feel like a good person inside, it makes you look like a good person on social media, you're just a vapid, virtue-signaling vomit bag.
The idea that people stay in a place out of tradition or emotional attachment alone is challenged by the reality that financial decisions usually come down to clear, measurable benefits. When those benefits fade, sentiment is often not enough to keep people in place. At the same time, Kennedy broadens the discussion by pointing to the cultural side of the issue, arguing that it is not just about what people pay, but how they feel while paying it. The panel suggests that these factors together can create a tipping point that is hard to reverse once reached. People do not usually leave a place like New York on impulse, especially when their lives and businesses are deeply rooted there. The decision to move often comes after a long process where staying starts to feel less beneficial than leaving.
Good to see. Meanwhile, the burbs, we talk about a flip, the burbs are now cooler than the cities. You still get the great restaurants, you got, music, and you don't have theater, which is great. So anyway, no crime, no homelessness, and you're in the suburbs, cities might be dead.
And Jesse, one thing that DeSantis has that other Republicans in Washington don't have is this ability to be separate from what's going on the House side.
I thought you were going to say the great hair.
Oh, well.
Because he had a nice head of hair on that. I didn't know it was that good, but it looked pretty good.
By the time that decision is made, returning becomes far less likely unless significant changes occur. Tyrus adds to this by framing it in terms of momentum, where once a trend starts accelerating, it tends to reinforce itself. As more people leave, it signals to others who may be considering the same move, making departure feel more normal and less risky. This creates a cycle where outflow leads to further outflow, gradually intensifying the original problem. The discussion then turns back to leadership and how both policy and perception are being managed. The criticism of Kathy Hochul is not just about the issue itself, but about how it is being handled. Liz McDonald adds another perspective by focusing on the fiscal impact of losing high-income residents, noting that because a large share of tax revenue comes from top earners, even a small departure can significantly affect state finances and make it harder to maintain public spending levels.
I feel like we're almost there. I mean, have you seen Harry Styles? But I understand the governor's concerns. Imagine the horror of getting misgendered on the coroner's report after you've been. So she asks her challenger, I don't see why putting criminals behind bars is so important to you. Well, because, Kathy, it's not important to you. That's the problem. The governor abandoned citizens' concerns for the attention-seeking, woke garbage that her staff handpicks.
The ripple effects of this dynamic go beyond immediate financial concerns and shape long-term planning and investment decisions. Infrastructure, public services, and social programs all rely on stable funding, and any disruption to that stability introduces uncertainty that can slow future growth. The panel argues that these challenges cannot be solved with short-term fixes, but instead require a broader approach focused on sustaining investment and engagement over time. That means balancing different needs while keeping the overall environment competitive and attractive. Greg Gutfeld frames this as a test of adaptability, suggesting that the outcome depends on how well the situation is managed as conditions change. His commentary highlights the idea that reputation alone is not enough to guarantee long-term success, especially when other places are constantly evolving and offering alternatives.
Rolling.
We must and will make our state safer. This means New Yorkers can walk our streets and ride our subways. Our kids can go to school free from fear. We have to make our state more affordable. And New Yorkers are just struggling to pay rent, food, and gas to get to their jobs. They're hurting. And we must reverse the trend of people leaving our state in search of lower costs and opportunities elsewhere.
Yeah, so she's ordered the National Guard to bomb Florida and Texas.
The panel frames this moment as a turning point where today's decisions will shape the state's direction for years to come. Economic pressures, cultural shifts, and political responses all come together to create a complex situation that requires careful handling. While humor and analogies make the discussion more engaging, the core message is still one of urgency. This is not an easy challenge, but it carries serious consequences for the future. The outcome will depend on whether the response evolves into a broader strategy that addresses root causes rather than just symptoms. Until then, the conversation is likely to continue, with each development adding another layer to a story still unfolding.